So I just want to capture how weird this scene is. It's like 9 degrees outside. It's freezing cold. And the pipeline people, the unions, are like having a beach party. It's surreal. Okay, hi there, Bill Houston doing a selfie here. I'm here at the Constitution Pipeline hearing in Oneonta at the SUNY campus. In my opinion, there's some kind of parking and accessibility issues, but a lot of people did get in there. The tone of the hearings are really different from last night in Binghamton, thank God. And so I just want to point out one part of the scene here. So the first part is this one. I mean, those are bright lights. I'm irised all the way down and I still can't really... There it is. I mean, it's jobs. Okay. And then the other thing I want to show you, there's 2 big signs like that. The other thing I want to show you here is the Bernie bus. There it is. The Bernie bus. That's where the union guys all came in, on the Bernie bus. Matt's riding in style. This is what I want to get. Rome, New York, Utica.
Before we start, can everyone just silence their cell phones? It's like a movie theater. You don't like those interruptions.
Huh?
That's right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Molly McBride. I'm an administrative law judge with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm going to be presiding over this evening's legislative comment session. Can everyone in the back hear me okay? Okay, great. Before we get started, I've made an announcement a few times. I'm going to make it one last time. Those of you who have heard it a couple of times, I apologize for droning on and on. As most of you are aware, the department is holding 3 hearings to receive public comment on these applications. The first hearing was last evening in Binghamton. We have tonight's hearing, and then we have the 3rd and final hearing tomorrow in Cobleskill. So far, I have approximately 80 speaker cards. So that means that 80 people would like to put a comment on the record here this evening, and I am going to have to limit comments to 3 minutes so that we can get all speakers in. Now, even limiting comments to 3 minutes to get 80 speakers in may not be possible, and if it is, it will make for a late evening for some people who have to stay toward the end of the hearing. If you made a comment on the record last evening in Binghamton, I'm going to ask you to defer making a second comment here this evening. The reason for that is that all comments made last evening are part of the record, the same as comments made here this evening. So you don't need to repeat your statement again, it's already part of the record. I would also like to let everyone know that if you are farther down in the order and you don't want to stay to the end of the hearing, equal weight is given to written and oral comments. So if any point in the evening that you decide you don't want to wait any longer to be called, you may submit your comments in writing to the department. The mailing address is out in the lobby on our table. Written comments will be accepted until February 27th. That date was extended, so some of you may have thought that comment period ended on January 30th, but that comment period was extended. So again, equal weight is given to written and oral comments, so you do not need to make a comment here this evening to get your comment before the department. You may submit it in writing. Okay. So as you know, we are here this evening to receive your comments on the record regarding the applications of Constitution Pipeline Company, LLC, and Iroquois Gas Transmission System, Inc. Constitution Pipeline LLC proposes new construction of approximately 124 miles of interstate natural gas transmission originating in northeastern Pennsylvania, crossing into New York State and Broome County, extending in a northeasterly direction through Shenango, Delaware, and Schoharie counties, terminating at the existing Wright compressor station in Schoharie County. In New York State, the Constitution project will include approximately 99 miles of new 30-inch diameter pipeline, temporary and permanent access roads, 1 meter station, and additional ancillary facilities. Iroquois has applied for a new Title V air facility permit for the Wright compressor station located at 330 West Fall Road in the town of Wright, Schoharie County. Pursuant to 6 NYCRR 621.8, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation published notice of this hearing as well as last evening's hearing in Binghamton and tomorrow's hearing in Cobleskill in the department's electronic publication, the ENB, on December 24, 2014, and in the Daily Star on December 27th, the Evening Sun on December 23rd, and in the Times Journal on December 24th. This public comment session is for members of the public to put their comments on the record for the department's consideration. Please understand this is not a question and answer session. If you have any questions, you must raise them outside of this hearing here this evening. Contact information for the DEC representatives is available outside of the table. Anyone who does wish to make a comment here this evening must fill out a speaker card. As I stated, I have approximately 80 speaker cards so far. I will take the speakers in the order of elected officials first, and then citizens in the order that you have filled out your speaker card for me. As I said, due to the number of people that wish to make a comment, I am going to have to limit your comments to 3 minutes. As you can see, we will have, some of you probably noticed, we have a timer that we will display on the screen behind me. That will let you know how much time you have left to make your comment. Although it can be hard to get your comments in those 3 minutes and you may wish to go on longer, I would ask you please be respectful of the number of people that wish to make their comment, and when your 3 minutes are up, please defer to the next speaker. There will be no exceptions to the 3-minute rule. I will call your name when it's your turn to speak, and I will call 10 people at a time to come down to the front row here so that we can keep this moving quickly so that we can get as many speakers as possible. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, so if I do, please correct me when you come up to the podium. After I call each individual speaker, I will ask you to please come forward to this podium here to your left. Speak into the microphone. When you make your comment, please speak loudly, slowly, and clearly into the microphone so that our court reporter can make an accurate record and so that everyone in the room can hear you. Please begin with your name and your address, and if you are speaking on behalf of a group, please identify which group you're speaking on behalf of. I would request that everyone please remain silent when someone is speaking. I appreciate that this is a very important issue for everyone here, and that's why you're all here this evening. And I also understand that this is an emotional issue. I would ask that you please be respectful of everyone who is speaking. If there are any outbursts in the audience, or if it gets loud, number one, we cannot hear the speaker, the court reporter cannot make an accurate record, and it's not fair to anyone else that's here. We all respect each other's opinions, and so I ask that you please remember that at all times. Again, written comments will be accepted until February 27th, so you may submit them in addition to any comments you make on the record here this evening. Before I begin calling speakers, I'm going to ask Steve Komsick from the Department's Division of Environmental Permits to give a brief opening.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Tomasic. I am the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation point of contact for the Constitution Pipeline and the presentation projects. I just want to point out before we begin that at the table off the wall we have a couple of documents. One is the short document on how to comment on the application. Of course, as Judge McBride said, you can comment in writing up until the end of the comment period. Unfortunately, this particular document went to press before we extended the comment period. It still has the old deadline date, but the deadline date has been extended to February 27th. Also, there's a fact sheet here which includes many details about the project under consideration tonight and DEC's role in the project. I won't go through all of that now in the interest of time so that we can get ready for the speakers. However, I do want to point out that after the end of the comment period, which is now February 27th, DEC will review all comments that are presented to the department, either orally at any of the public hearings today or in written form. It will include them in consideration of the final decision on the permit applications. And as part of a final decision on the permits, DEC will provide response to substantive comments received related to the permit applications as part of the final permit decision. Thank you.
I'm going to call the first 10 people and ask that we come down here to the front row. After those people have come forward, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we're going to begin with comments. So if I call your name, please come down here to the front row. John Lawrence, Dolores Nebinger, James Johnson, Jeff Taggart, John Rodenti, Robert Eklund, Stephen Connors, Inga Graffi Kiekler, Carol Marner, Eugene Marner. Again, if I called your name, please come forward. And I'd ask that everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first speaker is John Lawrence. And Mr. Lawrence will be accompanied by Dolores Nebinger, our second speaker.
Good evening. My name is John Lawrence. I'm the supervisor of the town of Afton.
And my name is Dolores Nabinger, supervisor for the town of Bainbridge.
As supervisors of the town of Afton and Bainbridge, we appreciate the opportunity to comment on the various water quality permit applications of Constitution Pipeline. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has granted the applicants a certificate of public convenience and necessity in order to construct its 124 miles of pipeline from Susquehanna, PA to the town of Wright in Schoharie County. 8 miles of that pipeline lie within the towns of Afton and Bainbridge in Shenango County. We know that the applicant has worked closely with landowners, local officials, and other stakeholders to plan the route and has made multiple changes to address concerns which have been raised. As part of this process, the applicant has worked with environmental agencies at the local, state, and federal levels to ensure that the project has the least negative impact upon our streams and wetland areas. Overall, the impact to wetlands is actually quite limited. It's remarkable that construction of a new 124-mile-long pipeline project would only result in permanent loss of wetlands of less than 1/10 of 1 acre. To help offset this, Constitution has proposed a number of wetland mitigation projects in conjunction with the project construction, which will actually result in a net gain in wetland areas in the various affected watersheds. In New York State, over 120 acres of wetlands will be preserved, enhanced, and protected. The wetland mitigation projects include wetland enhancement, wetland establishment, and wetland preservations, and upland buffer establishments. All of these projects will enhance water quality and further protect our streams and aquatic life. It is also critical that DEC and the public be fully aware that the Constitution Project will provide numerous communities along the pipeline route with their first ever access to cheaper, cleaner burning natural gas. Bainbridge has already established a local franchise in conjunction with Leatherstocking Gas Company to provide for local distribution to their residents and businesses. Afton has started a dialogue with Leatherstocking to provide the same. Both Bainbridge and Afton realize the immediate savings in school tax, new growth and job opportunities for our existing businesses, and the best, if not the only, stimulus to come our way to provide for economic growth. It is significant to consider the beneficial...
I'm going to let him read my half.
Ms. Naviger's statement to keep things moving. Go ahead.
It is significant to consider the beneficial financial impact to a homeowner now heating their home with pipeline heating with propane or heating oil. Last year, if a homeowner spent $2,000 to heat their home with heating oil or propane, having natural gas would have reduced that bill to approximately $750 and over 60% savings. It is estimated that the Afton School could realize a savings of $60,000 in heating costs. The benefits to Amphenol Aerospace in Sydney is also critical to the economic health of our region. Many Amphenol workers and retirees live in this region, and we should do everything we can to ensure that those jobs stay here now and in the future. Amphenol needs natural gas service, and Constitution is that solution. We respectfully request that DEC work closely with the applicant to ensure that all environmental issues are fairly and expeditiously addressed. We urge approval of the permit application. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Johnson. I'm going to ask you to withhold clapping so that we can keep things moving. Is that what you got? Electeds are first. Yep.
Good evening. My name is James Thompson. I'm chairman of the Delaware County Industrial Development Agency. On behalf of the Delaware County IDA, I hereby submit the following comments regarding the permit applications pertaining to the Constitution Pipeline project. Initially, it is important to note that the Constitution Pipeline will provide natural gas service to a number of communities in Delaware and surrounding counties. In particular, we are concerned that natural gas service be made available to the Sydney area, where a major regional employer, Amphenol Aerospace, is relying upon a commitment of the state of New York to bring natural gas service to the manufacturing facility. Indeed, the Empire State Development Corporation has provided a $750,000 grant to the Delaware County IDA in order to help facilitate this service. We need to move forward quickly to connect Amphenol to natural gas, and expeditious approval of the permit applications before the DEC is essential to our efforts. We have been impressed with the comprehensive examination of the environmental issues related to the construction of the Constitution Pipeline, which have been prepared by the applicant. All the issues regarding streams, waterways, and forest lands have been thoroughly researched and explained. It is clear that both the federal and state regulatory authorities have critically examined the work prepared by the applicant, and in some instances have required additional environmental protections or changes to the plan. Indeed, the applicant has altered approximately 50% of the original pipeline route in consideration of concerns or objections from landowners, local office officials, and regulatory agencies. Mitigation projects have been proposed to reduce or eliminate negative impacts upon the wetlands or the water bodies. Two such projects will be initiated by Constitution and Delaware County. Significant efforts are being made through the mitigation projects to restore or create new wetlands and improve critical headwaters of the region's watershed. Significantly less than 1/10 of an acre of wetlands are slated to be permanently filled, while over 112 acres will be preserved, enhanced, or created. Additionally, over 23 acres of upland, including 10 acres in New York State, will be purchased as buffer to wetlands. 2 of the New York mitigation projects are adjacent to state forest preserve lands. We are confident that the construction activities outlined by Constitution will not have any permanent negative impact upon the environment, and it is important to note that the construction activities will be continually monitored by federal state regulatory agencies. On balance, the project offers significant economic benefit to the region and the future prospect of delivery of lower-cost energy to our residents and businesses. The significance to Amphenol and the regional economy cannot be underestimated. Environmental impacts are limited and temporary, and remediation offered which more than compensates for any transitory environmental effects. We urge DEC to expeditiously approve this application.
Thank you. Jeff Taggart.
My main concern for the town of Franklin is the supply of natural gas for the township, the villages and stuff, and the compressor station, the emissions. I think they're not regulated stiff enough. They've got to be tested further. And my main comment is, we don't know what is being emitted, the fine particles and stuff, but it's just like asbestos. When they did asbestos, it was a safe product. We found out now that it's not. Let's do some testing and make sure the emissions from compressor stations, which I'm not against the pipeline. I think it's, a major thing we need, but we have to make it safe. Thank you.
John Rodenti. I'm going to call a few more people to come forward. Felix Burdell, Edward Elise, and Richard Downey.
Okay, my name is John Redenti, and I'm representing the Village of Sydney and the Mayor, Andy Matviak. The Village of Sydney looks at the pipeline going through our part of the county as an opportunity. The reasons are as follows. Sydney at the present time does not offer gas to its residents. Natural gas would save our residents 50 to 60% on their heating bills each year. The state of New York promised to bring gas to Sydney so we could also serve Amphenol, helping to protect over 1,100 jobs in our region. Natural gas as a fuel option should also help us to attract more businesses to the area, which in turn will stimulate our economy on a long-term basis. Constitution has proposed specific and extensive protections to wetlands and streams, keeping damage to the environment at a minimum. Constitution's mitigation plans will greatly expand wetland areas along the pipeline route, permanently filling in less than 1/10 of an acre of wetlands. Our experience with the Constitution is that they work closely with us to protect the environment. Safety issues. Many things we do have risk associated with it, but the opportunity to offer a lower cost, cleaner product to our residents, in the village's opinion, far outweighs any risk. Keep in mind that New York State already has over 5,000 miles of pipeline serving our communities. There is no site pollution like power lines running through our counties. The pipeline is buried and monitored constantly by a team of trained experts and regulated by the federal government. In summation, the village is asking DEC to grant the wetland and water permits to the Constitution pipeline because the issue has been thoroughly studied by FERC and the state and federal regulatory agencies. Please grant these permits without delay and without the need for further hearings.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Robert Eckern. Robert Eklund? I'll call a few more people to come forward in the meantime. William Roach, Craig Buckby, Nancy Moen, Anne Marie Gordy. Just come down to the first row, please.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Bob Eklund. I'm the Upstate Coordinator for the Solutions Grassroots Project. I'm also a councilman of the town of New Lisbon and a member of the elected officials to protect New York. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the DEC, Commissioner Martins, and Dr. Zucker for their willingness to take a stand to protect all New Yorkers from the dangers of high-volume hydrofracking. I would encourage them to recognize that most of the same factors which make HVHF unsafe for New York are also factors which make fossil fuel infrastructure build-out unsafe for New York. Probable watershed contamination, air pollution, and soil contamination are unacceptable risks inherent to pipeline construction. Much like the attempt to portray high-volume hydrofracking in a benign light by narrowly focusing on the singular action of an explosive underground incident, the pipeline proponents want us to ignore the attendant ills accompanying a pipeline. I note that only a few years ago, many of the same people who now castigate the DEC for their decision excuse me, were the very same ones calling on everyone to just let the DEC do its job. Now that it has, they choose not to hear what they don't want to hear. The fact that the proponents for the pipeline have come here not to address concerns about the watershed, but instead to complain about the over 400 peer-reviewed studies, which they would like to portray as, in their words, junk science, speaks volumes about their intent and their integrity. Thank you.
Stephen Connors.
Hi, good evening. I'm representing myself. My statement is basically as somebody who's an affected landowner. The proposed Constitution pipeline poses serious issues to the affected landowners and their neighbors, but there's also issues which affect the upstate region and the state as a whole. Allowing our beautiful Catskill region to be invaded by industrialization such as the pipeline can have long-term effects on how we develop economically as a region. There's a lot of talk about how we're going to have cheap gas and everything, but let's not be naive about this. This stuff is going to be eventually going overseas when they can get 2 to 4 times more for it over there. So we're going to be stuck holding the bag. It's a temporary measure. Already, even before the pipeline has been approved, people in the area close to the proposed site have had their sense of well-being and security in the fact that they own and control their land taken away from them. This is to benefit a corporate investors, shareholders, and company leaders, for they will receive the lion's share of the benefits and will not be directly affected by any negative impacts which result from their actions. This is an important point when you look at Williams and Cabot's history of infractions in Pennsylvania and Colorado. Look at the history to see the future. This issue has been presented by Constitution as an issue of public convenience and necessity, yet the pipeline companies themselves have made mention of shipping to Canada as a possibility. Once again, let's not be naive. If a major company with shareholders can sell gas in foreign countries for much more than they can get from us, that's exactly what they're going to do eventually. It would only be prudent as a company to make as much return as possible before the gas fields play out, which they will. FERC conditionally approved the pipeline recently without mention of domestic public convenience and necessity. They and the Constitution also left out some important environmental questions, left them unanswered. Instead, avoiding these questions with the use of the term mitigation, which means deal with the disaster after it occurs. Water is taken for granted at this point in many parts of the country, and I have no doubt that many in this area also take it for granted due to its abundance and the fact that it's always been here. But as the old saying goes, you don't know what you got until it's gone. When fossil fuels are no longer considered acceptable means of energy, water will still be necessary for our survival, and it's not a limitless source. I have faith in you, our DEC, to take the long view in coming to a decision. I ask that you consider with great thought the moral, ethical, human, and environmental implications of your decision and how it will impact the people of this region and our resources. Please don't allow the Constitution to shove this down our throats. Thank you, respectfully.
We're adjusting the microphone so that people, when you're speaking, please speak into the microphone. And if you're reading your remarks from something, would you hand them up to the table here when you're done so we can give them to the court reporter?
My name is Inge Grafik-Kiklak. I'm a landowner of Sydney and a very strong supporter of the Constitution pipeline. What this state needs is a government that does not stay in the way of hardworking people that want to make a living and businesses. This pipeline would be creating jobs and therefore is necessary. Especially, we are a state that is 49th in business friendliness and #1 in people moving out. I hope this agency, DEC, will not be part of Governor Cuomo's dictator-like governing style and put politics and emotion ahead of reason and facts. And if you do so, you are like a puppet in Governor Cuomo's toy box. You should serve all people of New York, not only the 1% and environmental terrorists of this state that Governor Cuomo listens to. This state needs jobs, and the pipeline would bring some. And New York needs gas to function. People who are against this pipeline and fracturing are against progress. I would suggest everybody that is against it should get out of fossil fuels. And oh, one more thing. I suggest you all in Albany government read this book from Alex Epstein, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels, to get out of your vortex of emotion and into a higher realm of reason. Thank you.
Number one, I'm going to remind people again that I will demand respect for the speaker at the podium. Anyone who does not respect the speaker will be asked to leave this room. You do not need to agree with them, but you need to respect and listen to what they're stating on the record here this evening. And I'm going to ask you again to hold your applause so that we can get to our speakers. I'm going to call a few more people, and then our next speaker, Larry Bennett, Wes Gillingham, Christine Alexander, and our next speaker is Carol Marner.
Department of Environmental Conservation. It is a good name. Conserve means to keep what blessings we have today so we will enjoy them tomorrow, whether they be our harvests or our topsoil or our forests or our water or our built environment, which means that we have designated you not only to protect what we have now, but what we will have. Thus, you are the guardians of our past, of our present, and of our future. I live in the town of Franklin, New York. Franklin was settled in 1788. The founders of Franklin, although living under adverse conditions and in difficult times, built not for the present, but for the future of their children and grandchildren. Within 50 years of the first clearing of land for farming and the first rude cabins were built, they had not only built churches and one-room schoolhouses for the education of their children, but also a magnificent secondary school. 2 of the original buildings remain. They also built a fine business center and residential streets of grace, simplicity, and beauty. And when the railroad came, they decided not to have a depot in their village, but well outside of it, so as not to introduce smoke and noise to the pristine and peaceful place in which they lived. Like birds, they did not soil their nests. And that is why we still have our beautiful village, which in its entirety is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And we also have a building, which is a national monument, St. Paul's Church. And that is why we have birds and minks and bobcats and fishers and bears and foxes and the resident cougar. We have always had hawks and woodpeckers and bald eagles year round. But recently, our excellent Delaware and Otsego Audubon Society has proven that we have winter resident golden eagles as well. The village of Franklin sits on in a creek basin, which means it has hills on either side. Below the top of one of these hills above the village is the course chosen for the Constitution pipeline, as well as for another pipeline, and also as the site for a 30,000 horsepower compressor, whose effluents, whether gaseous or liquid, will find their way down to the creek and into the village. Others will speak tonight about the fragility of our stacked shale hills, heaving up every winter and sliding down every spring. But it seems logical to me that if one is to put in a pipeline, it should be planted as deep and be as impenetrable and as invulnerable as can be to avoid the possibility of runoff and contamination. But instead, as I have read, it is built as cheaply as can be. This kind of infrastructure should not be built by private companies, but like roads, by the state, which is accountable. Through no fault of our own, we in Franklin are as vulnerable to disaster as pipelines. The oil and gas industry and the paraphernalia that go with it, like compressors and pipelines, imperils not only our present and our future, but our past and our heritage, which you are the guardians of. Do not permit this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugene Marner.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify here. My name is Eugene Marner, and I have lived in Delaware County for more than 40 years in the town of Franklin. If it were daylight, you could step outside and look across the beautiful Susquehanna Valley to the ridge on the other side, and you'd see Franklin up there. On that ridge, Constitution Pipeline proposes to clear-cut forest and blow up bedrock and seize private property in order to build their unnecessary and destructive pipeline. I'm retired now, but during my working life, I was a member of several AFL-CIO unions, and I'm still a dues payer in one. But I don't see why that should matter, as this hearing is not being conducted by the National Labor Relations Board, but by the New York Department of Environmental Conservation. The question this evening is not whether a few short-term construction jobs will be created building a pipeline to transport radioactive Pennsylvania gas to Canada, where it will be exported to China, but rather whether the building of that pipeline will irrevocably damage the water supplies of central New York, and in doing so, compromise for generations to come the health, the safety, the property values, and the rural way of life of the people who live here. In their application, the Constitution Pipeline Company bases their engineering calculations on a 5-year storm event. What can they be thinking? Central New York has experienced several hundred-year floods in just the last few years. The construction practices proposed in this application would likely be severely damaged or swept away in a 100-year flood or a 500-year flood. Climate change has been increasing the frequency and intensity of devastating floods. The design of this pipeline will not protect New York's water or its residents. Again, according to the application, 55% of the route would affect forested woodland. That is not wasteland, but the home of the headwaters of the Susquehanna River. Clear-cutting hundreds of acres of forest, much of it on steep slopes, will inevitably result in erosion and large amounts of sediment washed away during construction and afterwards during heavy storms. The citizens of New York rely upon the DEC to protect our environment, to protect wildlife habitat, and to ensure the safety of the water supplies of millions along the entire length of the pipeline as it travels through the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Since there is no way this mission can be reconciled with the construction of the Constitution Pipeline, I ask you to not grant the company a 401 permit. That is what New York State's water quality laws demand. I will submit my comments in greater detail at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Felix Brydell. I'm 14, a freshman in high school, and live in Franklin, New York, well within the burn zone of the proposed route of the Constitution Pipeline. I have a great love and respect for nature and life, and I should hope you at the DEC do too, because it's your job. Which is why I'm completely baffled that this hearing is even happening at all. How can there be any doubt that the environment will be affected? There is so much that could go wrong. You are funneling a highly flammable substance at high pressure through a long stretch of pipeline. The history of pipelines, as anyone with the access to the information can tell you, shows us that pipelines leak, pipelines explode, the environment collapses as the water is poisoned. Gas companies have always shown they have no respect or knowledge of how nature and ecology works, nor have they shown anything more than a passing regard for human life. Not many days ago, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, announced that he was going to ban hydrofracking on the grounds that it is unsafe. Never a particularly big fan of Cuomo myself, I was still immensely respected that he had had the bravery to stand up against the big money and the power wielded by gas companies. And this pipeline is carrying fracked gas. When there's a leak or an explosion, this gas will be leaked into the surrounding waterways, full of whatever chemicals have elevated cancer levels, polluted aquifers, and done God knows what else in places like Pennsylvania. Gas is not a sustainable resource. Global warming is happening and the environment is changing, and rather than attaching ourselves to this natural gas, this limited resource that will likely dry up within my lifetime, we should be thinking of some way to help Earth's biosphere to survive this process. We won't be fleeing Earth via rocket anytime soon, so we're stuck with what we've got, and we have to protect it, for its sake and for our own. I have fought to keep Earth, our home, as healthy as can be, so I can die happy, and I hope my grandchildren will remember what I did for them. But I may not have grandchildren or even children if the Constitution Pipeline is permitted. I may die from cancer. I may die from water poisoning. I might die in the fire of an explosion. And around me, this beautiful area, one of the last clean, safe, pristine areas on Earth, will die too. But I and so many others in this room, here to fight against this pipeline, can die with a clean conscience, knowing we have fought for our lives, for other people's, and for the wonderful beauty of the trees and the streams and the birds in the air. Our consciences will be clean. But you who let the pipeline through, you will be to blame for this, for the deaths of innocents, for the destruction of clean water, which is nowadays so rare, the annihilation of this incredible wilderness. I know I couldn't live with that on my conscience. The question is, could you? Thank you.
Is Mr. Lees here? I'm going to call a few more people to come forward. Dennis Higgins, Rachel Soper, Colleen McKinney, Tom Gorman.
My name is Edward Allies from Jeffersonville, New York. I'm a concerned citizen, and I might add an older one. Opposition to the Constitution pipeline is irrational, emotional, and flat out wrong. It is the safest and most economical means of transporting natural gas to where it is needed, to heat homes, power automobiles in a manner that is 40% cleaner than oil or coal. But really, the opposition is not so much against a pipeline. After all, there are hundreds, perhaps thousands, of pipelines across the country. It is against fossil fuels, against oil and gas, without which life, as we know it, would come to an end. So my advice to those who oppose this cleaner energy is to forget your dreams of sustainability. My God, what an overworked word that is. And solar and wind are only possible with subsidies from governments awash in deficits and with backups, I might add. Only possible with backups of oil, gas, and yes, coal. The fact is that we are blessed with an abundance of potential energy for a very, very long time to come. Thank you.
Richard Downey. Richard Downey.
My name is Dick Downey, Unitigo Area Landowners Association, representing 300 families in Otsego and Unadilla. Like the young man before me, who preceded me, I have that question too. Why are we even here? We need pipelines. According to the last census, half the homes in the United States are heated with gas. 100 million homes. We need pipelines to deliver that gas. Factories are moving to and returning to the United States. Costs of production and chemical feedstock are lower here because of shale. The Midwest, the old Rust Belt, has new energy and new jobs. We need pipelines to continue that momentum. By the way, Amphenol, 20 miles down from on Route 88, 50 new manufacturing jobs. Reason? The promise of cheap energy. Electric generation is switching from coal to gas. In 2008, gas provided 21% of electrical generation. It's about 30% now and growing. We need pipelines to service this need. Because of the switch to natural gas, CO2 has been reduced in the United States to the lowest levels in 20 years. All this with a growing population and a growing economy. 24 LNG terminals are in the planning stage, are in construction. Strategically, we need them to offset Russia's chokehold on Europe. 18 pipelines from Russia pass through the Ukraine to Europe. We need pipelines to export our abundant natural gas. A big switch is going on, and it's going to get bigger. Cities like New York and Boston are switching from number 6 and number 4 fuel oil to gas. Meanwhile, all of our cities are getting cleaner. Okay. I'm sorry? I beg pardon?
Thank you. Our timer has stopped working, but apparently your time is up.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
William Roach.
Thank you, Judge McBride. My name is William Roach. For the record, I too am a union member at the university where I teach. My wife Christine and I are affected property owners of 127 pristine acres in Davenport, New York. As of 2 p.m. yesterday, we also became defendants of our land when served condemnation papers for eminent domain proceedings by the plaintiff, the Constitution Pipeline, who arrived in New York State 2 years ago spewing the mantra, "We just want to be your good neighbor." As a professor at New York University, part of my non-teaching responsibility is to assess a candidate's worthiness for a position as a student or colleague. Not every applicant is granted approval. Academic history, standards, performance history, data research, best practices, and outcome histories submitted by the applicants are vital roles in granting positions at the university. You, Judge McBride, have a similar role in determining if the candidate, the Constitution Pipeline, is legally worthy of an admission to New York State by reviewing their application for a 401 permit based upon standards of law, the Clean Air and Water Act, past performance histories, and just as important, the efficacy of the data Constitution supplied you in its application. In my clinical lab at the university, I have a sign at the entrance that states, "In God we trust, everybody else bring data." When you review a sampling of data in the applicant's portfolio, for example, stormwater assumptions, it's apparent that Constitution allowed economic benefit and innate human traits of confirmation bias to support best practice management plans. The Constitution's best management practices are based on short-term, 5-year data when longitudinal data of 4 100-year storm events over the last 10 years was available to them. This cherry picking resulted in unsubstantiated, erroneous assumptions of pipeline integrity, water quality, estimates of soil competence, water flow, and overall ecosystem resilience found in the application submitted for the 401 permit. Finally, Judge McBride, on a personal note, Christine and I have a 1.5-acre crystal clear pond fed by the underground natural spring on our land. Our family and friends fish it and we swim it on a regular basis. Eventually, the water flows as streams to the majestic waterfall that surges on our property over a cliff, downward into the town of Oneonta. I am here today as an ombudsman for our land, our water, and its inhabitants, asking that you protect its natural integrity and deny our good neighbor a 401 permit. Thank you.
I'm going to call a few more people forward. Ray Lewis, Lodi Marsh, Shirley Shue.
Craig Buckby, Burlington, New York. On issuing a legally binding finding statement prohibiting high-volume hydraulic fracturing in New York State, I commend Commissioner Martens. Some have said it a bold decision. Conservative and responsible is how I would describe it. Responsible because it is a decision related to our state's people and their resources, their health. It involves our property, our concerns, our lives. It is a decision based on responsibility to care for those very things. As well, it is a conservative based. As well, it is conservative based on the very definition of the word, to be cautious about change, inclined or disposed to preserve existing conditions. A bold decision would be to keep going, show continuity and deny the 401 water quality certificate for the Constitution Pipeline. I live, play, and work in the area. Sorry. I am a licensed and insured New York State fishing guide, number 6698. Sorry about that. I have fished this area of the Susquehanna River and its tributaries for 20 plus years. I've been fly fishing for over 40. I know stream culture, entomology, and trout. The Susquehanna has some wonderful trout fishing within its banks, as well as its feeders and their tributaries, whether it be Wharton and Butternut Creeks just west, or Otsego and Charlotte right here. They are far better trout streams than most outside our neighborhood realize. Not really wanting to admit this in a public forum, as I do enjoy my privacy when fishing, the brook trout fishery at times is on par with many of the famous highly protected blue lines of the southern Appalachians. New York is a water-healthy state in that it has an abundance of fine water, and it watches over it with strong regulations and guidelines for water quality standards. Each clearing and crossing is an encroachment, another hurdle for nature to overcome. They are accumulative. For every section of canopy opened, every trout stream undermined. Sorry. There are many on the project, and there are many on the project maps. Comes the potential for negative, not positive impact. If cool water with its dissolved oxygen is at such a premium, what possibly could a warm pipeline and its construction bring to the table to assist in conserving and preserving this resource? The answer is none. I respectfully implore the DEC to deny the 410 water quality certificate. Thank you.
Again, I would ask that if you're reading from something in writing, if you hand it forward for our court reporter.
Nancy Moen, New Lisbon, New York. I can give you one guarantee: the Constitution Pipeline will leak methane. This greenhouse gas is 86% more powerful than CO2 in terms of atmospheric warming. Additional leaks will occur from related compressor stations and the collateral lines that surely the Constitution will attract. This pipeline is particularly vulnerable to damage as it is designed for the 5 to 10-year storm in a region that has already sustained multiple 100-year storms within the last decade. Nearly 300 New York State designated wetlands will be disturbed. Wetland mitigation is a poor substitute. 50 to 100 years after man-made wetlands have been designed, they are both less functional and less diverse than native wetlands. Native wetlands are irreplaceable. Stream disruption equals species disruption. In terms of trout and other species, loss of even a single spawning season can be disastrous. The DEC must deny the 401 water quality certificate, as this project will violate severely the New York State freshwater standards. The Constitution may benefit in terms of temporary construction jobs, but it will not benefit residents of this region in terms of permanent employment. Though a small percentage of the fuel may well supply locally, the bulk will be exported far out of our region and probably internationally. This fossil fuel pipeline will be obsolete in my lifetime, and I'm not young. This intelligent resistance to this project is only diverting our resources away from our real work, that of developing sustainable energy projects. Please deny this application.
Anne Marie Gordy.
Hi, my name is Anne Marie Garty, and I represent Stop the Pipeline through the PACE Environmental Litigation Clinic. First, I'd like to thank the DEC for extending the public comment period. This is a very complex matter, and it takes time for the public to digest the thousands of pages that have been submitted in the joint application. So we appreciate that. Tonight, I'm going to be brief. I want to try to speak for some people and things that cannot be here. First, I'd like to speak for the landowners who are not here because this pipeline company wants to serve them with papers, and they're not given any, like in a regular court of law, which would grant them immunity to come to a situation. They're not granted immunity, so they can't come and speak tonight so that they don't get served. For them, I speak. These people own thousands of acres of land in New York State, and like many thousands of other people in this part of the Upper Catskills and central New York State, they do a tremendous value for the state for free. And what they do is they leave their property alone. They leave it alone for nature to do what it does best. Nature cleans the water. Nature grows trees and has mycelia growing around its roots, and it provides habitat for countless creatures. Many of those creatures, millions of those creatures, will be killed by this pipeline, directly and indirectly. Now that's the sort of truth you don't read in the FERC's FEIS, the word kill. But that's what it will do. It will kill hundreds of thousands of mature trees, trees which these landowners pay taxes on to provide ecological services for our state and for the states downstream of us. And they pay twice. They contribute and they pay taxes and they get nothing back. They don't ask for pilots or tax abatements like these thieving corporations do who come and steal their property. That is who we are speaking for tonight. And I don't have time to go into the next part, so I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Larry Bennett. I'm going to call John Davis and Mary Ellen Collier to come forward.
Hello, my name's Larry Bennett. I work at Burgoma Gang in Middlefield, but I also live in East Meredith with my wife, Christine Alexander, and we're about a mile from the proposed path of the pipeline. As grassroots citizens of New York, a lot of us pushed the state to deny the frackers the right to despoil our land with wells. We succeeded. And excuse me, I didn't think that they were allowed to talk to me while I was doing this.
Sorry. Please be quiet while someone's speaking.
Now we need to deny the pipeline, which would be used to move Pennsylvania gas through our fields, farms, and forests towards Albany and beyond. That pipeline will enable the gas companies to continue to devastate Pennsylvania. While New York benefits with the gas tax monies, some jobs, it's a blood benefit at the cost of the citizens of Pennsylvania. The second issue is that the gas companies have clearly stated their argument that the pipeline and their gas is about national security. It's all about energy security. It's about protecting us from the hideous Mr. Putin. But what they are equally clear about is that they intend to export the gas, and that's not a political decision. That's not an energy decision. That's a decision about profit. That's what it's about, gas company profitability. They have a right to make profits, just like any company, just like our company does. But they don't have the right to make profits off of our land without our consent, and they have no right to despoil our state. My request is that the DEC listen to every concerned citizen with at least as much consideration as FERC apparently has given the gas companies. The acronym DEC stands for Department of Environmental Conservation. The DEC needs to live up to its name and to its job. Thank you very much.